everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. So it's not often that we get to talk about Supreme Court cases that can be talked about for decades or centuries to come. But this is one of those cases. The Supreme Court recently took up a case, and this is extremely exciting, that could end up overturning all of the ATF's overreach. That's how big this case is. So let's go ahead and talk about what's going on here. Now, real quick, I just want to thank you all very much for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, consider hitting that subscribe button. We have Second Amendment content on a daily basis, news and reviews, and I've got a lot of great stuff coming up. If you are not seeing my videos all the time, hit that little bell notification and leave a comment. Let me know what's going on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get to the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what's going on here, because this is a very interesting and extremely important case. As a matter of fact, this case doesn't even deal with the Second Amendment directly, but it does have some very indirect implications and would affect all of the ATF's overreach, because this case deals directly with Chevron Deference, and that's what allows the ATF to interpret the GCA and the NFA in order to come up with all of their overreaching rules that they've come up with to this day. So again, it could affect all of that, basically wiping all of that interpretation out. So this would be massive. So let's go ahead and talk about the case a little bit, talk a little bit about Chevron Deference and why this is so important. I'm going to try and make it as easy to understand as possible. This is the case of Loper Bright Enterprises v. Raimondo. Okay, so Chevron Deference actually came from a Supreme Court order involving Chevron. So if the Supreme Court were to limit or overturn Chevron Deference, they would basically be overturning one of their own previous orders. Now, what Chevron Deference allows the government to do is it allows the executive and executive agencies like the ATF to take ambiguous laws and statutes that are open to multiple interpretations, and it allows them to interpret them, which basically eliminates several branches of our government. So instead of the legislative body coming up with new laws or maybe rewriting something to make it clearer, the agencies are allowed to do that on their own. So either the executive branch or these agencies are allowed to look at it, come up with their own interpretation, and then that's where you get the rules from the ATF. So it's Chevron Deference that basically allows them to do that interpretation. So as you can imagine, if you get rid of Chevron Deference, the agencies would no longer be able to interpret that. If they had a question about something and they wanted to know whether or not something was considered under the NFA or under the GCA or something like that, they would have to go to Congress, and Congress would have to deal it out. Basically, this bypasses our government. So it bypasses the legislative branch and allows the executive to basically take over. It allows for too much power under one single agency. It allows for too much power under the executive branch. Again, any time that you consolidate power into one branch, you have a problem, right? We have the executive, we have the legislative, we have the judicial. Each one of those is supposed to handle their own things and are separate for a reason. That's what keeps our government running and what keeps our government different from others. Once you allow other agencies and you allow the executive to consolidate all of that power into one through interpretation, then you get what we're seeing today with this government overreach from the ATF and several other agencies. So again, while this case only deals with fishing, it mostly deals with what the Supreme Court is really going to argue here, which is Chevron Deference. And if Chevron Deference gets overturned, guess what's going to happen to the rules? We're going to see all of those rules go away, and if they're going to want to make any change, they're going to have to go through Congress to make that change instead of coming up with their own interpretations just simply on a whim or through the advice of some executive officer. So again, that's huge, right? That's massive. That would not only have implications on things that exist currently, but we've seen them float things through the air that they've maybe wanted to do in the future, or things they've tried in the past, but maybe it didn't go through at the time that they might try in the future. It'll keep them from doing any of those because, well, the law won't be open to interpretation by them anymore. Now, I can think of one direct example right now that you might remember, and that's when the ATF tried to ban green tips. If you remember, they redefined them, which essentially would reclassify them, and that reclassification would make them outright banned. They weren't able to do it. That kind of fell by the wayside, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't try and do it again in the future. With Chevron Deference being overturned, if it got overturned, then they wouldn't be able to do that. They'd have to go through Congress again in order to either reinterpret existing law, or Congress would have to write a new law altogether. So as you can see, this is extremely important. This is one that we're going to be watching very, very closely. And again, even though it involves fishing, it really implicates pretty much the executive and all agencies under the executive. So this would be massive if we could get Chevron deference overturned. So again, this is one to watch, okay? Loper v. Raimondo, this is going to be one of the biggest cases that you guys are going to see in your lifetime, I think. So again, we'll let you know if there's any changes or what happens, oral arguments and things that come up, and you know which direction it looks like the Supreme Court might be headed. Yeah, you never really know until the very end, but again, we're going to keep a close eye on this one. As a matter of fact, there's even been, I believe, like 50 amicus briefs on this one. We have the GOA, the FPC, I believe the 2AF. There's several 2A rights organizations that have sort of kind of jumped on by sending that amicus brief to the Supreme Court in this particular case. So they see its importance, we see its importance, and we all want to see the separation of powers be in place without Chevron deference existing. So again, very big case. Looking forward to see what happens here. And I want to thank you guys very much for watching. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, that little bell notification. A like button is always appreciated. And you guys have a great day.